This video covers shifting the production possibilities curve, which is, I guess, sections 2.4a and b in chapter 2 of our textbook. So the question is, what does it mean when we shift the production possibilities curve? Right? So we've covered what the production possibilities curve means, and now we'll talk about what it means when we shift it. So if the production possibilities curve shifts, that means there's a change in the amount of stuff we're able to produce in a particular economy. So if the curve shifts outward, or if there's an increase in the production possibilities curve, and again, we a lot of times abbreviate production possibilities curve with the PPC. So if there's an increase in the PPC, this means we're now able to produce more stuff than we could before. So we can now produce more goods and services. And in essence, what this represents is economic growth, becoming more wealthy. So with a PPC curve, we represent economic growth and a country becoming wealthier with an outward shift in the PPC or an increase in the PPC curve. So this is wealth. If instead there's a decrease in the PPC, which we generally don't want to happen, but a decrease in the PPC means there's been economic decline. So Venezuela is experiencing this now. And what it means is now you're able to produce less stuff. You're growing poorer. So a decrease in the PPC curve represents economic decline. See if I can spell. Economic decline. And so this means we can produce less stuff overall. So let's turn to the graph so we can see what this looks like. Okay. So here's our typical PPC curve. Okay. On the vertical axis here, we have the amount of abstract art we can make. Okay. And on the horizontal axis here, we have all the computer code we could write to turn into software and so forth. Okay. So the PPC curve again represents the maximum amount of goods a country can produce given its available resources and technology and know-how and so forth. Okay. So again, point A represents the amount of abstract art we could make if we devoted all of our time just to making abstract art. Point B represents the amount of computer code we could write if all we did was sit around all day and write computer code. Okay. So the line in between the PPC curve here represents all the different possible combinations if we wanted to have different values of computer code and abstract art and didn't want to have only one of art or computer code. Okay. Now, let's look at an outward shift in the PPC curve or an increase in economic growth and see what that would look like. So here we've got a shift outward of our PPC curve. We represent it by just another line that's drawn further out up to the right. Okay. And so every point along this line represents more stuff. So suppose we were at point C here, and with economic growth, we move out to point D here, right? At point D, we're wealthier in a sense because we have more, we can produce more computer code and we can produce more abstract art than we could before. So in essence, right, this outward shift in the production possibilities curve represents economic growth, which means that a country can produce more goods and services with the resources it has, right? It can produce more than it could before, okay? Now, what about a shift inward of the production possibilities curve, okay? So this would be economic decline. This has happening in Venezuela, or this could be the result of a civil war, right? Or take World War II for example. Europe's economy shrank after World War II. Well, actually, during World War II, and it took a while for it to recover and come back. So wars are another example of economic decline, and we would show it with a shift inward of the production possibilities curve. So here we basically see that the production possibilities curve has shifted inward. That is, if we were at point C, PowerPoint, you make me mad. Let's try this again. If we were at point C, and now we're in red. Anyway, and we now move to point D, right? So D clearly has less lines of computer code and less abstract art than we can produce. So an inward shift or a decrease in the production possibility curve represents economic decline. Right? Basically means you can produce fewer goods and services with the resources that you have. Okay. Now, when we shift production possibilities curves, it doesn't always necessarily have to be the same amount of shift. Okay. Right? Suppose, and we'll talk about these on the next slides, but suppose we had some sort of innovation or change that just affected our ability to write computer code. And this would make sense, right? Maybe we developed some faster computers, right? And it might not affect our ability to produce abstract art. So the shift of the PPC curve does not always have to be the same for both goods. So in this graph here, we show a shift out, right? The PPC curve shifts out. We do get an increase of the amount of stuff we can produce, but it's largely due to some innovation that affected our ability to write computer code and not our ability to make abstract art. So the curve won't always shift out in a uniform fashion, right? So here we essentially have something that increases our ability to write computer code, right? But not for abstract art. Okay, and so we only show a shift on the axis for computer code. Okay. Now, what we haven't addressed is what would actually cause economic growth, or what would cause these curves to shift outward. Okay. So there's quite a few things that would cause these curves to shift outward, right? So the first and most obvious one is an increase in resources, right? If someone discovers a new source of oil or a new source of copper or aluminum or something like that, right? An increase in resources, specifically a discovery of a new resource, means you have more available resources and you can produce more stuff, okay? We could also get an increase in what we call kind of productive powers, and that is an increase in human or physical capital, okay? So when you hear the word physical capital, this means the things we can make other stuff with. So this is stuff like tractors, computers, and so forth, right? The technology we use to make other things, that's physical capital. Human capital is the knowledge and ingenuity we have inside of our heads. And so if we increase our human capital, that is our knowledge and scientific inventions, or if we increase our physical capital, that is tractors and computers, in general, we can make more stuff. So this would increase our production possibilities curve, i.e. increase economic growth, okay? Now, we've alluded to technology, so obviously our ability to use technology. PowerPoint, you are just trying my patience. Okay, our ability to use technology is going to cause the curve to shift outward, right? If we make new inventions, or if entrepreneurs create new ideas and create additional innovation, right? All of these things cause economic growth and would cause the curve to shift outward. And lastly, something we touched on when we were talking about property rights, but something that also affects economic growth and shifts in the production possibilities curve would be an improvement in economic and political rules, right? So if you have a better legal system, right, a more fair, impartial court, if you have better protection of property rights, right, you're going to get more economic growth and a shift outward of the production possibilities curve. Or if a country opens itself up to international trade and to larger markets, it means they have access to more resources, more knowledge, more technology, and they can grow a lot faster. So this is exactly what happened to China, happened to Vietnam when they started to open up, and pretty much every country when they open up to the outside world, they get economic growth, and that's represented with their PPC curve shifting outward. And lastly, we have investment, right? You can eat less today, that is, consume less, and save for the future, right? Which means you'll be able to put that money into creating human capital or creating more physical capital, that is, machines to make stuff, which allows you to make more stuff into the future. So what you could do is save today and invest the money, and you have more money in the future. And that represents increased wealth and a PPC curve that's shifted out as well. Okay, so if you invest now, what you're doing is essentially meaning you're going to be able to produce more stuff in the future. So saving today and investing also represents an increase in the production possibilities curve. Okay, and that's it for shifting the production possibilities curve.